Okay, so this is my painting setup. I have my palette and brushes and Gamsol there and my painting there on my easel, and next to I have all my paints and brushes on this sort of rolling cart. And I like to paint under a lot of light, so I have lights up there like that, and I have these lights here. These lights, I built this studio as a studio, and I had these lights installed permanently, and then these two standing lamps here I got at IKEA. I point those at my canvas, and also these, and also that window. Okay, so I let this dry, and now it's time to start painting. Now, sometimes when I do a really complex painting, I do a very careful drawing on drawing paper or on the computer, and then transfer it to the canvas, transfer a very, very precise drawing to the canvas. But in this case, I'm going to be doing this one more like when I would go down and do a live portrait model or a figure model. I'm just going to draw it out loosely on the canvas before I paint it. Now, I use raw umber for that, and I use a relatively large brush, just really thin raw umber, and the largest brush so I can just get the general shapes in. I don't need to get anything precise. I don't need to get the precise definitions, but what I need to get is the overall shape of the thing. So I'm doing, of the objects that I showed you that you could paint from, I'm painting from one of those. So basically the figure looks sort of like this, and if you draw it real rough like this, it allows you to get the overall shapes easier than if you try to concentrate on the details at first. You don't know, most people might have a tendency to start on that face and really get that face right, and then move down to the shoulders and then move down here. But you'll never really get things in proportion unless you draw the whole, get the whole thing. And don't worry about the details until later. Because now I can start putting in the location of the nose and the mouth and the eyes. So the figure looks about like that. This looks probably like it's too high. I'll probably put that about there. And this looks like it's probably too high, so I'm just using my paper towel to wipe that off a little bit, just so I get the landmarks in before I start doing color. You could do that with a brush as well. I suppose I could just get my brush wet and wipe that off more precisely than a paper towel. Kind of do this. Maybe that's the way I should do it. Kind of do this. Just kind of. That arm is really sort of more like that. This is kind of making a mess. Okay, so that's enough to get started with. Okay, pour a little more. I'm running low on Gamsol. I'm going to pour a little more Gamsol in here. And then, now, the main color there is black, so I probably want to start with black. And get the general blacks in first. The whole idea is to get the general colors in first before you bother with the details of the color. So the general, that general black color. Now I could use black paint out of the tube, and I might sometimes, but for this purpose I'm going to use a mixture of ultramarine blue and burnt sienna. Those two together make a real nice black. But the advantage of that is that you can vary the black from a warm black to cool black, depending on how much burnt sienna you have in the mix or how much ultramarine blue you have in the mix. So that's going to allow me to make the black a little more interesting than just a plain flat black. So right now I'm semi-ignoring the different lighting on the black. If you look at the picture, the black is not, there is some light falling on it so you can see some shapes in the black, but for right now I'm laying in the overall shape of it. Which seems like it's about like that. About like that. And actually there's some shoes down here, isn't there? Shoes down here like that. Now before I put any more thought into that, any more modeling into that, I'm going to put some of the other colors on. It's always best to state the overall color shapes first, early on in the painting. State the overall color shapes, because otherwise you won't get them relating to each other properly. If you do one color and then later you do the other color, then the other color, they don't match up with each other very well. You can't get the accurate colors, because this color that I'm putting on now, this mustardy color that we'll assume when I finish it up will be that sort of gold base, is only this color in relation to this color, in relation to the black. So I can't really judge exactly what this color is until I know what this color is. Now there's a white too. I always like to, at some point early in the painting, I like to establish my darkest darks and my lightest lights. It doesn't have to be right at the beginning, but near the beginning, so that everything else can be judged against them. I'm going to do that now. So in this painting, in this photograph, the lightest light is that part of the shirt there. The other half of the shirt is a bit darker. The other half of the shirt is a bit like this. That's the lightest light in this whole scene that I see. The darkest dark is parts of his business suit are the darkest dark. So I'm going to want to get also ultramarine and some burnt sienna, totally unpolluted by white, by any other color, so it can be as dark as possible. And maybe just slightly on the blue side, and it's really darkest right here. Dark there and here and there. So notice I'm using a pretty big brush comparatively for what I'm doing here, but notice how it makes the work go very fast and efficiently and well and properly too. It's going to have sort of a painterly look to it in the end, hopefully. So I've established my darkest darks, I think, and my lightest light. So that's good, because that way I can judge the color of the pink of the face better. Wax this brush off just a little bit. Get a new paper towel. Let's see, the pink of that face is, I don't know. Let's try some raw sienna and a little bit of red. The red is very, very strong, so you only need a small amount of it. And so this is a mixture of raw sienna, or sometimes yellow ochre, and the red and white. And I'm going to say that's the lighter color. That's the color of the skin where it's hitting the sun. Now the dark side of his skin is darker, but it's also a lot cooler. It's also sort of bluer. So it's not just simply this color darker. It's noticeably bluer. So I'm going to use some of this. I've already got this little mixture of dark blue there, semi-black, and put it in here and see what happens. See if that's about right. Now, I don't spend a lot of time down here mixing the color because I can't really judge this color yet. I can't sit here and mix this color and get it just right and put it up here because I don't know whether it's right until it's up there, until it's next to the other colors. Then I'll find out. So I just get it about right, about what it looks like it's probably right, and then put it up there and see how it looks. And it could be a little darker. So get some of this black that I made earlier, put it in here, and it's probably, yeah, this brush is too big to render that nose and mouth, but it's enough to just get, you know, one dark side and one light side, and then I'll have to switch to a smaller brush pretty soon, actually. And then there's another light coming on the other side, on the dark side, that's brightening it up a fair amount over here. So maybe it's something like that for now. Now the only other main color in this composition there is green. There's a green there, and it's kind of a greeny green. It's kind of a green that I think I might need some cerulean blue. We all know that green is blue and yellow, right? So I'll use my yellow and the cerulean blue. And that green is a little yellowy. I don't think that's quite right. I'm going to put some white in it. So I think maybe I'll try some ultramarine in there. And some yellow. And greens are very often problem, especially for landscape painters. Green, getting a good green, a good natural green, is famously difficult. In this case, it isn't actually a natural green; it's paint. This little figure is painted, so it isn't really a natural green. Some green there. I think it should be that green should be more intense. So I'm going to skip the ultramarine and try it like this. Alright, and then the hat is also green. So I get the approximate shape of the hat. That's the bright side of the hat. The dark side of the green is quite dark. And again, a lot cooler, a lot towards the blue side than the light side. So, because I think probably in all of these pictures that I took, the bright light is a warmish light, and the shadow side is always going to be cooler. That's the way it is in these photos that I took for this module, but it's also a general rule that you often find in nature and in life, is that the shadows are very often cooler than the light side of it, which we can talk about in detail later about why that is. But for right now, it's just, I think this should move up a little bit. I'm just about ready to move to a smaller brush, but I want to just get the proportions a little bit better. Well, there's some green on this tie too, but that looks like a job for a smaller brush. But this does go up here. This goes up into there. So it's easier to judge the overall proportions of this thing if I've got the overall thing looking right before I start putting on the details. That way the details are in the right place. You know, he's a little shorter, I think, than that. He's a little, they sort of caricatured him a little bit by making him a little body shape a little shorter. And So I'm going to cut down these feet a little bit just with a, see, I didn't even put any color on the brush. I'm just kind of cutting those feet down a little bit by taking paint off, essentially by smearing that paint there. I think that looks about better. And then I could cut around the edges. I think what I'll do, this is this is raw umber. If I take my raw umber oil paint and a lot of white, I can make that same color. Not that the background has to be burnt umber, but for now it's going to be burnt umber. I'm going to take this and see how that looks, and then I can cut this in more precisely and get that shape better. And this kind of makes a whole curve. When I'm doing figures, I sort of look at where the curves go, where the lines point. And like the line of his forearm there sort of points, in the picture it sort of points to his foot there, sort of points right there to his foot. And then this sort of Y here, it tapers down. I think I've got this too high. His head's kind of big, you know, like when you caricature someone, caricature normally has the head is way too large for a regular body, and they've done that there. His head is way too large.